welcome to today's recap. What I'll do this morning is essentially go through what we discussed yesterday. We had a very interesting day yesterday, and so we'll just recap. Again, my name is Claude Kasonka. I'm connecting right from Zambia, and I'm very, very happy to welcome you all to this last day of the conference. As we all know, every drop really counts. So again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are calling from. So I'll just jump straight into the recap of Thursday's session, which was highly participatory and people were engaging, and we are looking forward to a similar engagement even on the final day, which is today, of this important conference. So there's a slide deck which is just showing, just to guide us as we move forward. As we have been doing throughout this week, the session is recorded, and if you continue beyond this, it means you have consented to the recording, and then the recording will be made available after the session. Please turn off your camera and also mute yourself if you are not the one speaking. So yesterday was very interesting, like I mentioned, and we discussed quite a number of interesting issues, starting with WASH responses to COVID-19, adapting interventions to mitigate infections. And from this session, it came out very clearly that although the immediate measures to combat the COVID-19 pandemic are important, we also need to increase our efforts to build strong institutions, proper regulations, and functioning processes to ensure that water and sanitation services are available to all. Next slide, please. And then in terms of, we know that behavior change is long-term in terms of, achieving. So generally educating people about COVID-19 is not enough. We need to address their motivations, their emotions, and specific living conditions which affect to what degree they are willing and able to apply hygiene behavior. So in this regard, what we concluded yesterday is that there exists no one-size-fits-all approach across countries, as there are various determinants for the hygiene behaviors that we see. And we also recognize that religious leaders and social media channels are tried and tested amplifiers for messages on preventive hygiene. Next slide. So the other session was on secure WASH, promote One Health, the importance of WASH for neglected tropical diseases, the NTDs, and there's a whole list of diseases that seem to have been, neglected. And these are still very, very important, as WASH plays an essential role to combat NTDs for both prevention as well as treatment of diseases. And specifically looking at people living with disabilities is also very important. So there has to be a roadmap which WHO has developed towards, which serves as a guideline in combating some of these neglected tropical diseases. So in terms of One Health, there is a framework that has been developed, which is transdisciplinary in nature, and encompasses human health, animal health, and environmental health, which really just re-emphasizes and underscores the importance of cross-sectional collaboration. So you see in the framework there that One Health encompasses the three important elements, which is animals, the environment, as well as animals, which BMZ has kind of structured its divisions to ensure that it responds very well to this framework. Next slide. And then we had also very interesting discussions from my home country here in Zambia, looking at inclusive green city sanitation, and I can resonate with this very well. And some key lessons that were picked from this conversation were that managing sanitation is a significant departure from business as usual, and that training frontline sanitation workers enhances professionalism and formalization of fecal sludge management. We learned also from this conversation that understanding markets and adapting funding and financing mechanisms is essential. And also the fact that there is scarce of data on-site sanitation and fecal sludge management, which is crucial in reducing GHG emissions and mitigating climate change. So there were a lot of conversations and discussions around inclusive green city sanitation yesterday. Next slide. So in terms of the framework, the inclusive green city sanitation framework, it's all encompassing and highlights what is needed to achieve inclusive green city sanitation through 4 pillars. Number 1, looking at inclusive sanitation, urban planning and design, environment and climate, and then community, formal and informal structures. These are intertwined and closely linked to each other, and this is what is needed in order to move the inclusive green city sanitation framework ahead. Next slide. So, and then we also had conversations around water operators partnerships, WOPs or WOPs, as a game changer for technical assistance. And what came out very clearly from our conversations yesterday, that the WOPs are a game changer because they make technical and financial assistance more sustainable, and that the solidarity-based peer-to-peer learning is empowering and leaves, or eventually leads to lasting changes that are important in achieving SDG 6. Next slide. And this is just the framework that is showing water operators, again, from not just talking about capacity to performance, from capacity to performance. And also yesterday we learned that because of this framework, we are able to see substantive results, including financial leverage and the ripple effect results for scalability and sustainability. So transitioning from a humanitarian to a developmental approach in water supply and sanitation. This one was focused more on a new approach to refugee management that, discussed issues around comprehensive refugee response framework. How do we respond in refugee setups? And we had lessons from Uganda, where there are the largest number of refugees in Africa with bigger problems in terms of wash. And what we learned yesterday is that refugees often get better wash services than the host communities around them, which lead to tensions. And also that the utility model encompasses transferring the wash supply from humanitarian actors to national utilities. And then we moved on to look at toilets of the Caribbean, meet the CRU Plus, which is an integrated approach to water and wastewater management. What we learned yesterday is that the CRU Plus is a second phase of CRU and is executed by GIZ and UNEP through the GIZ Sanitation for Millions project. And the aim of this is to reduce the negative impacts of untreated wastewater on the environment and people of the wider Caribbean region. So towards the end of the day, we looked at a global program for SDG 6.2 and 6.3. And this links to what I was talking about earlier, which is really from building toilets to treating wastewater. Okay, next. All right, so this is what we did yesterday. I'll pause there, and then I'll ask Matthias on which is a key quote of Asa Reina. Matthias, video please.
During the week on Water for Development, I would like us all to remember that in 80% of the households with water deprivation, it is actually women and girls who are traditionally responsible for the collection of water. That means that they are at risk of violence. They have to walk long hours every day to collect the water, and that puts them at risk of violence, but also of other health risks. It also takes away time for them in their lives, time they could have used for education or paid work. We at UN Women therefore believe that it's very important for all of us, it is our task, to see to it that women are included in decisions around water, water provision and planning around water. It is an issue of justice, but it's also better for societies. Thank you for your commitment to women's rights and gender equality.
All right, thank you so much for that keynote by Asa Reina, and we really appreciate the reminders that have been played in that video in terms of time savings and all those benefits that come with clean water. Moving on, today is another interesting day, and we hope to have interesting conversations as we've had throughout this week. We are going to focus on water integrity and equity for all, and this really speaks to many things that are important in the water sector. As we all know, women are disproportionately affected by water challenges as a result of climate change and mismanagement of water resources. And so today's session will focus more on issues, for example, of menstrual health and hygiene, which is going to kick off just after this recap. So we are going to have interesting conversations around that. And then we move to talking about women innovating for water, sanitation, and fecal sludge management. And then looking at women and COVID-19, strengthening women's voices. So we are going to talk a lot more about that, and then go into integrity readiness of water sector for climate change financing, and we wrap up later later in the day, which will be my afternoon here. For some of you, it might be in the morning. For some, in the evenings. So yes, let's look forward to today's sessions, and please let's move to the next site where we should be preparing for the next session. So please let's transition to the next link for the first session of the day. Thank you.